Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we do tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion that is posted Tuesdays in the off-season and twice during the regular season. The huddle features WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. We start off first with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC Trojan football news. Now let's meet today's panelists. A WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's The Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball reports. Also hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked On USC. That's Marc Kulkin. The editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, columnist, national recruiting guru, and a graduate of USC, that's Erik McKinney, and a former William Jewell College defensive back and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular WeAreSC column Musings with Arledge and his own weekly WeAreSC.com video show, Musings with Arledge Solo Edition. And he, too, is a graduate of USC, but the law school, that's Chris Arledge. And a reminder, programming note this week on Musings with Arledge Solo Edition, we'll hear the second edition, or installment, if you will, of his interview with former USC offensive line coach Pat Rule. And finally, a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes Fridays the Obvious and Not So Obvious, IMHO Sunday, and is an active member of the Football Writers Association of America, your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle. That's me, Greg Katz. Before we begin the kickoff for this Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here's a recap in USC football news. On Sunday night, Trojans got a huge defensive line commitment from Georgia transfer Bear Alexander, who officially visited the USC campus over the past weekend. Alexander has 3 years of eligibility remaining. More on that story shortly. The Trojans are now awaiting a response from former Houston offensive guard Cameron Johnson, who also visited the Trojans this past weekend. Johnson has 1 year remaining, and the feeling is that the Trojans are in a good position with Johnson after an excellent recruiting visit to Los Angeles. According to Lincoln Riley, former Florida offensive guard Ethan White, who had an early committed to the Trojans, will not be coming to USC. White had been expected to be a starter. Riley said the reason that White will not be a Trojan is that his football career is in jeopardy due to an undisclosed medical condition. And the USC football family is mourning the loss of former 1975 team captain, All-Conference, Honorable Mention All-American, and WeAreSC.com columnist Kevin Bruce, who passed away at the age of 68 after a long battle with brain cancer. More on this story at the beginning of the first half of the huddle. Friends, WeAreSC's Inside Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership, and we encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube to click on the red subscriber and like buttons. It's greatly appreciated, valued, and it's free. You can also listen to Inside the Trojans Huddle on many available podcast sites. And a reminder, WeAreSC.com is offering a subscription special. You can get all the WeAreSC premium content for just $29.99 up to August 31st, 2023, or $9.99 per month. So with that, we start the first half, the kickoff. Panel, we begin the first half of the huddle on a very sad note. Last Wednesday morning, our beloved friend and USC.com colleague, Kevin Bruce, passed away at 68 years old after a nearly 10-year battle with brain cancer. Kevin, a former 1975 USC football team captain, all-conference performer, honorable mention linebacker, and starter on the 1974 national champions, was known to WeAreSC followers as the columnist who write the very popular Defensive Speaking, which reviewed each Trojan game from a defensive perspective with select comments on the offense in general. Panel, this is a tough one. Your thoughts and memories on the passing of our WeAreSC teammate, Kevin Bruce. Marc, we'll start off with you. Your thoughts and memories.
So, I didn't know Kevin as well as the three of you, obviously. But I tuned into Chris's Musings show last week when he so eloquently eulogized Kevin. And what I took away from that was Kevin was a badass on defense. I mean, he talked about how they used to practice. And then I saw how he carried that over to the show. And, he would challenge me, and he would challenge me hard. And I can only imagine what it would be like to go against him during a football practice. So if that was his way of trying to help me and make me better, I enjoyed those confrontations. At times, it was a little frustrating. So but if that's what the competition was like on the practice field or going up against him in the game, I'm a better man for knowing Kevin. So that's all I'll add at this point.
Chris, you had a very strong relationship with Kev. Where did you first meet Kevin? And tell us about your memories. And again, let me echo what Marc said. It was a really emotional video that you had on your show. I could feel the pain in your eyes because I was feeling it myself as well. So tell us about your thoughts.
Yeah, I first met Kevin shortly after I moved to Dallas. I knew from his articles on WeAreSC that he lived out here, and so I reached out to him and we met for lunch. And after that, we met fairly regularly for lunch at a place right next to his work. Most of what I would want to say, I've already said. I'll just say this: that Kevin was clearly a football guy. He understood football. He loved football. He understood the game at a very deep level. But he was also a really good guy, and not afraid to mix it up, as we've talked about on this show, because he was passionate about USC football. But he was generous and kind and a man of great faith. And so I appreciate having had the opportunity to spend time with him, and we'll miss him. He was a good guy, and he deserves the tributes that he's been getting on this site.
Erik, Kevin Bruce, when did you meet him? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously met him writing for the site and what he would do. And like Chris said, I learned so much about football from him, just kind of talking. And what always stood out is how passionate he was about defensive football, but USC especially. I mean, when he would kind of get rolling after a frustrating defensive performance, it was kind of a mix of therapy and stand-up comedy as he was kind of going through what he saw from some of the guys. And he was good about, picking out the positives and here's what we need to work on. And again, learning so much from him. He was, like everyone sort of mentioned, so tough. I think it kind of speaks to his character that it was a surprise for a lot of people when this happened, just how long he was dealing with it and kind of kept pushing forward and would always, get his stories in and make sure that he was following through, on what he said he would do. And I think that kind of speaks to the character. But no, what'll always stand out is just kind of being able to listen to him go play by play through a game, and here's what he liked and here's what he didn't like. And again, the passion for USC football from him is just kind of unrivaled, I think, from what I've seen and the people that I've been able to talk to. That's what will always stand out to me about him.
Well said. Well, coming on the passing of Steve Bishop, who is a very tight friend of mine, Kevin I met because for the Boston College game way back when, Gary Paskowitz had called me. He says, "Hey, Kevin Bruce, you know who he is?" I said, "Yeah, I know. Yeah, Kevin, sure." He says he wants to meet you. He enjoys reading you. I don't know why, but that's what he said. So I said, "Sure." He says, "Here's his phone number. He wants to meet you because he was living in Boston at the time, fighting cancer and working there through his business. I guess he's able to do it, juggle it." And so I met him at a restaurant in Italy, I guess it's the north side in what would be, I guess, Little Italy, called Bricco's. I think it was called Brickos. And the first time we met each other, it was almost like we had known each other forever and a day. We sat for about 3 hours. I was telling him about my days at Edison High School and the teams we had there, and where we both grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. And he would go to places that I went. I was about 5 years older than Kevin, but the relationship grew and grew and grew. And I think Chris knows this. You know, game day, I would be getting texts from him, and he would be unloading. And, you know, he says, you know, we suck, you know. But you know what I took away from him was the reason I'm so passionate about USC football, and my expectations are so high, because there was a guy that was a captain of a 74 national championship team. He was part of the 72 national championship team. If anybody knew what it's like to be on a national championship team and play, and the expectations, this guy knew it like the back of his hand. And if you talk to Kevin, you really got the sense that here's what a national championship football player looks like, acts like, and behaves like at the University of Southern California. And it used to just kill him, and myself, and I'm sure the others on the panel as well, to having have gone through the last several years since the Pete Carroll era, that, you know, playing for USC, a storied program, if you meet the guys who are on these national championship teams, and I've met more than just Kevin, there is a sense of like, we don't accept second place. We don't accept 10 victories. The only thing they accept is we're in it for the national championship and win it, and definitely win the conference. And there's no rationalization why it was a good season. I know Kevin felt that, you know, the limitations last season, he was appreciative of the turnaround, but I talked to him 2 weeks before he passed, and he was very serious about the defense and where it was headed, and he was very concerned about it. You'd never know this guy was in a hospice home. It was all football. And I just want to end this with something that I found, it was something that was very difficult for me to deal with. And that was, you know, a lot of people on our show, and I want to thank everybody that watches us. We're at about 4,700, probably on the average, give or take. And I'm sure during the season will be more. You know, we're all people here. We're giving our opinions. They're nothing more than our opinions. You can agree with us, you can disagree with us, and that's part of the fun. But when it becomes personal, that's out of bounds for me. And when I say out of bounds, I'm talking about personal attacks, ripping on our physical features, our culture, our religion. There's no place on this show. If you're going to go in that direction and leave comments like that, we're not the show for you. And I bring this up because, and I know it's not anybody's fault that watches the show, but, you know, we have known, those of us and the staff, and obviously you viewers have not known it. Kevin's was in a battle for his life for a long, long time. And part of the reason his voice was at times very difficult to listen to is the chemotherapy and the cancer drugs that he was taking were taking a huge toll on his body, and it attacked his vocal cords. And for him personally, and as a teammate, and I think I speak for the others here that have been on the show, for him, he looked forward to being on the show. He knew his physical limitations, but I felt that, you know, it was really important that he be able to do this. I'll tell you, he was so loyal to this show that even when he could not talk or speak and be on the show, he wanted to have the script that we go by every week so he could stay up to speed on what we're doing. It would stimulate his mind in difficult times. And that's just the type of guy he was. He treated everything that he was involved in, business, whatever, like he was on the team. You're on his team. But I just want to leave it with this, that, you know, we don't know what goes on in everybody's life and that sort of stuff. But when somebody has some physical thing that, you know, is, you know, like, why is he doing this? There may be a reason. And Kevin's his voice was that he was suffering from the after effects of chemo. So most everyone on this show that comments or people that watch our show are very kind to us, very good. Even if you don't agree with this, you put it in a thoughtful, considerate, and critical manner, and we accept that and we appreciate it. I know this: when football season starts, I'll be taking 2 steps to my phone to start a text to Kevin, but Kevin won't be there to answer, and that's going to be really difficult for all of us. So wherever he is, I know he'll be out watching us, and I know he's in good hands now because he told me he knew where he was going after the Life on Earth. So I celebrate his life like everyone else does. So on that note, it's probably appropriate that we transition to something defensively, which I know Kevin would love. As we mentioned at the top of the show, defensive tackle Bear Alexander, formerly of the Georgia Bulldogs, announced on Sunday night he will be a USC Trojan. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining. Okay, panel, here we go. Give me your impressions of Bear Alexander, former, I don't know whether he's 4-star or 5-star, depends on your recruiting evaluation, I suppose, coming out of IMG Academy in Florida, which, by the way, was sold to a new conglomerate. So we'll see what happens with IMG Academy. What does Alexander mean for the Trojans defensively and specifically the defensive line? Let's get back to work here. Marc Kulkin, what does it all mean?
It means that Lincoln Riley is putting together a really good 2023 recruiting class. It doesn't seem to end. Look, you have now, you have your cornerstone, you have your anchor, presumably, of that defensive line, someone you can put in the middle that is going to be able to bring a championship mentality. Let's not forget that. He's coming off of a national championship. And bring that type of culture to the locker room that Lincoln Riley has been trying to build from year 1 going into year 2. And what it also does is it's showing people across the country, you know, like, all right, we know USC is going to be great offensively. They've got the Heisman winner at quarterback. They've got Lincoln Riley. But now all of a sudden recruits and other players are paying attention, like, all right, there's the first guy to jump ship and say, I can go help that team win a championship playing defense. So if that starts to resonate and that domino starts to fall, that's going to help USC in the future. But as of right now, the defensive line, it gives them incredible depth. I mean, you can now start spreading that talent that they've already brought in and start spreading along too deep. So you know, we're hearing great things of how that defensive line is looked so far throughout spring. You've just now added a blue chip piece into that room. And if Sean Nua is as good as we've seen him be, he's got a really, really good piece to work with, along with Anthony Lucas and Jack Sullivan. And from what I'm hearing, not just on the record, off the record from everybody, Solo is killing it. So you add him, you add Bear, you add these other guys. There's really no place to look but up for the USC defense this year.
Chris Arledge, you're from a defensive cloth, so to speak. What does it all mean? Should we get overly excited? Should we temper our enthusiasm? What do you think?
Well, it's a lot easier to play defense when you have really big, really athletic guys up front. And, you know, there were 2 questions when Lincoln Riley came over. One was whether he can build a defense, and number 2 was whether USC is disadvantaged because you can't get the sort of big time blue chip defensive line recruits in California that you can get throughout the South. And I think Lincoln Riley's answer to that is that he's just going to go and pull guys from other parts of the country. Mark is right. When you look at the 4 defensive line transfers USC has brought in, so with Sullivan and Barnes, you're talking about 2 guys who are big and experienced, who have played well in the past. And then with Lucas and Bear Alexander, you're talking about 2 guys who got playing time as true freshmen, which isn't easy to do on the defensive line, but who have the physical skills to be first-round picks in a couple of years. And it's very difficult to be an elite program unless you have elite guys up front. When you have Lucas and Alexander, you have 2 guys who are potentially truly elite guys up front. And Mark is also right that the depth is much better. If your second team line is guys like Solo, who's been playing very well, DeJohn Benton, who I thought was actually very good in the spring game. Tyrone Tellini, who I think made huge strides last year, will probably make huge strides again this year. If that's your second group, you are in a dramatically different position than USC was last year. So I know USC fans still have their concerns about Alex Grinch and his scheme. I share some of those concerns. That being said, it's a lot easier to be a defensive coordinator when you have big, fast, strong guys in your front seven. And USC now has that, where they didn't have, they had one. They had one before. Now they're starting to build some real depth. So I'm excited about it. I think that adding guys like this changes the entire nature of the defense and the season. USC is a legitimate playoff contender at this point. And I don't know that they would have been without these 4 defensive line transfers.
Thanks for reminding Keon Bars. Appreciate that.
All right, Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, this dude's got a sack in the national championship game. Do you know how many other guys on USC's roster have a sack in a national championship game? I mean, that's sort of what he brings. I don't think he's Caleb Williams or Jordan Addison, just in terms of what he's kind of produced throughout his career when they came over. But yeah, a guy who's that big, that athletic on the defensive line, those are where you're seeing, I think, Lincoln Riley roll the dice a little bit on, yeah, you don't have to be a 3-year veteran with a ton of production. We can do something with Anthony Lucas. We can do something with Bear Alexander. And you mix them in with guys like Jack Sullivan, who was a big-time contributor on a really, really good defensive line last year. Keon Bars that has a ton of experience, especially experience in the Pac-12. And now you're talking about a defensive line where you're, again, we've all hit on that depth so far. Stanley Taufo was the guy in the middle of USC's defense for multiple years, as a guy who came in as a linebacker, eventually moved up. And again, coaches, players, teammates, all of that, they rave about kind of his work ethic and how much he puts in. He's not the guy in the middle of a national championship defense, and especially not the only guy in the middle. Now you're talking about guys like that, guys who USC has had to count on to play huge numbers of snaps and be game changers. They can come in with the second, third. You can roll in multiple lines. You can move guys all around. Bear Alexander can play probably a couple spots for you. Jack Sullivan can move all over the line. You can do so much now up front, and it's not just bodies. It's really talented guys who have already proven that they can do it at this level. So no, it's huge. It's huge. I think just from what you've done to the roster there, adding him, and then also, again, Mark touched on this, and not to kind of go over it, Lincoln Riley had to prove that he could go get a defensive guy. He could go get a name defensive guy. And when Bear Alexander goes in, again, we're talking about a top 20 guy in the transfer portal this entire offseason. I think On3 has him at number 17, and the number 1 true defensive lineman. That says something when USC can go get that after a year where nationally the defense kind of turned into a punching bag a little bit with what they did. That perception, it means something. This is another, coming from IMG, but a Texas kid, being able to go in there and prove, yeah, we can get these guys. There can be a home for you out here at USC. That's big. They're really, again, it's not quarterback. It's not Caleb Williams, who could come in and do what he did, but boy, it's not far off of that.
Well, I have mostly positive vibes about this. There are some things that I kind of raise an eyebrow in the sense from on paper, it all looks good. Okay. It all looks good. And, I watched the spring game. I'm going to give you an example of this. It wasn't even like Anthony Lucas was out there. I mean, I didn't see what I wanted to see. That doesn't mean, I wasn't in practice. So, so I couldn't see what he did every day. And Lincoln Riley's certainly correct about that. But on game day, which that spring game was, I look at the guy's motor. And the guy I was most impressed with was probably Keon Bars. I thought he was just dynamite. I mean, he was relentless. He stood out. He's got a motor. And I thought Sullivan was pretty good too. I don't know how much speed he has getting upfield to the quarterback, because we don't know, because they weren't allowed to get to the quarterback. But they're better players than what they've had. Okay. Potential is unproven talent. We're going to have to watch and see how they actually play. Now, getting to the point of Bear Alexander, I did a little background check on him, and, I have all the faith in the world that the coaches know what they're doing and bringing these players. And obviously, Bear Alexander was a household name in recruiting, yada, yada, yada. He had the sacks in the national title game. That was great. But then I looked and I saw that he had been to like 5 schools in 4 years, constantly transferring, I guess, probably through maybe no fault of his own, the rules of the governing bodies, that he was ruled athletically ineligible at some schools, districts, which happens. I've seen that. It's not always the fault of the player. So I'm not putting an onus on him. But I want to see the motor on this guy, that on paper, like I said, it looked great. But he's still got to prove it. I thought that Bars proved it in the spring game. I'm not saying that Lucas isn't going to be a great player, but I think that if you didn't know any of the plays, you could get fired up on every down. And I think in the spirit of Kevin Bruce, that's what Kevin would always say. I look at a player each down. Does he bring it every down? Not every second down or every 2/3. So I want to see, because I remember how excited everyone was, and I'm not, people say, come on now, you can make an onion cry. Ishmael Sopsher, remember, coming from Alabama, he was going to be the next big thing, and we know how that turned out. Doesn't mean that Bear Alexander isn't going to end up a first-round draft pick, but I'm just going to let it all play out and say they're better than they were, but it still has to happen. So with that in mind, let's move to last week. Highly anticipated Florida offensive guard Ethan White, who was expected to be a potential starter, would not be coming to USC. At this point in time, what effect does White not coming to USC matter to the USC offensive line? Mark, where are we at this point in time with White not coming?
They're in the same, well, they're actually in a bigger hole than they were when everyone thought he was coming, because Cortland Ford has moved on. So look, I've spoken about this. They have the numbers, they have the pieces to make the offensive line work, including having enough for 2 deep, but there are some holes. They need to find someone who's going to be able to replace Andrew Voorhees. Gino Quinones showed he can play guard, but you want to start moving the pieces around a lot. I mean, Michael Tarquin has been playing left tackle pretty much most of spring. He played right tackle at Florida. You had Jonah, who is playing inside. They're talking about playing him outside. What if USC doesn't get any more pieces? Now do you start maybe thinking, do we put Jonah Monheim at left tackle? Do we put Mason Murphy at right tackle? There's some holes. I'm not going to say they're overly concerned, but they need to find a replacement for Ethan White. They were counting on him. They were counting on having Ford. Cameron Johnson took a visit over the weekend. I know they're counting on him. They brought in the kid, the young man from Wyoming, Emmanuel. Eric, am I pronouncing it correct? Pregnon?
Sure. Sounds great.
Great. So, but he looks like your prototypical tackle, 6'6", 300 pounds, arms that just keep going when he extends them, but he played guard. I'm hearing that they have to address a couple of spots. So it's a big deal that he's not going to be able to play because they had the interior locked up. They knew that they were going to have White. They knew that they were going to have Dietich. And I think for the most part, they were counting on having Jonah play right guard. They brought in Kingston Jarrett. They brought in, and they were planning to bring in Ethan White, and they brought in Tarquin. Jarrett Kingston, I don't know. Did he play tackle in the spring game? I saw him playing inside a lot. Here's what I think is going to happen. They need to bring in two big guys. One of them is going to be Cameron Johnson. And hopefully they convince Emmanuel Pregnon to be the other guy. And I think they're going to look at him at a tackle spot.
Chris, do you have concerns about the fact that White is not going to be here? And does that kind of mess up the plan, so to speak, going forward?
I think if Cameron commits, and I think everybody expects that he will, then it doesn't bother me as much. That kid's a good football player who was all conference where he was. He'll be able to step in and play well. I think USC has a lot of good offensive linemen. That left guard spot is still a concern. I'm sure Quinones is working hard. He's played there before and played pretty well. I don't know that he has the physical attributes that USC wants in their offensive lineman. I'm not sure he's as big as you'd like to have at your left guard. But if they land Cameron Johnson, if they land Pregnon especially, then I'll feel very good about the offensive line. Look, an offensive line that has Mason Murphy running with a second group can't be that bad. I mean, let's be honest. That kid's really talented, and he has some experience. If he's a second team offensive lineman, then you have some players. And they do have some players. Put on top of that while I do wonder whether or not they're set at left tackle, they don't have a Tony Baselli at left tackle, but you usually don't. I don't know that having a left tackle is as critical when you have Caleb Williams. If you have Matt Leinart, you need a tackle that will stop edge rushers from getting in the backfield because he's not going to be able to make people miss. Caleb Williams is going to be able to make people miss. You could have your left tackle whiff half the time and they're going to get 3 sacks because Caleb Williams moves so well. So I think Tarquin will be fine there if they indeed keep him there. And I think the offensive line is going to be fine because Caleb Williams' skills make everybody better. So I'm not that worried about it, but they do need one of those 2 transfers at the very least. If they don't get either one of them, then I think the coaching staff is going to be a little underwhelmed with their options at left guard, which is not a shot at Quinones. I think he's probably a pretty good player, but I think if you're a national championship team, he's probably not a starting left guard.
Erik, you recruiting is your wheelhouse. Are you sweating bullets over the fact that White's not going to be there and slotted in at left guard? What's your thoughts?
No, I mean, he's replaceable. You didn't need to replace him when he was coming in, and you felt pretty good about it. But he wasn't the best left guard in college football last year. And again, USC's working pretty quickly to find a replacement and bring someone in. These coaches the USC coaches can work the transfer portal. They understand what's going on there. They're not going to get caught. We had no idea what was going on. Now we don't know how to go get anybody. They're going to go and they're going to find someone and they're going to bring someone in. I honestly think the offensive line's okay. I mean, Chris is right. You could just have the center snap it back to Caleb Williams and have no offensive linemen, and Caleb Williams will figure out what to do. Michael Tarquin came in and certainly the thought was, he played right tackle all last year at Florida. He's going to come in and play right tackle at USC. So it was kind of one of those spring surprises, I think, when he got thrown in at left tackle, talked about it, and then that's all he seemingly did was play left tackle. If he's okay, that's fine. USC did not get great play out of their left tackles the entire year last year. That I think was the weakest spot of the 5 along that offensive line. No matter who, they had 3 guys playing left tackle and all of them kind of gave you the same thing. So if that's Michael Tarquin's floor, which I think that's kind of what we've seen at Florida, I think that's sort of, he fits in with what Bobby Haskins gave you and what Cortland Ford gave you last year, and when Mason Murphy played there. And then you hope the experience kind of raises that up a little bit as he gets more and more comfortable. I think you're okay there. Jarrett Kingston, again, he played only left tackle last year at Washington State. He played guard before that. But yeah, the thought was he played left tackle there. He's coming in to play left tackle. And Josh Henson would really up front early on. No, he's a guard body. He's an interior guy. Justin Deej referred to him as a guard when he first got there, which is kind of the first time you're like, oh, he's not going to play left tackle. So they're very comfortable with him at guard, which tells me they're very comfortable. I mean, this staff is comfortable with Jonah Monheim playing anywhere. So if he stays out at right tackle, I think Caleb Williams is fine with that. I think the staff's fine with that. And I think you're set. So I think you are okay on the offensive line. Even if you don't get anybody, you're okay. What you want to be is a Joe Moore Award winner. You want to be the best offensive line in the country. You want to not have Caleb Williams have to make 3 guys miss in the backfield on every single snap. And if you are going to be that, everybody's right. You need one of these all conference guys that you're involved with right now. You need to add 1, you need to add 2, just because you need to go 8 strong deep on the offensive line to get through a year. And so you can't just have, we've got our starting 5 and we feel okay about those guys. So again, they could get through the year right now. You're talking about Mason Murphy being a backup. Andrew Milek is a guy that got, positive reviews from the coaches this year. You have some guys, Elijah Page came in early and did well as a true freshman early at left tackle. Again, you don't want him taking super important snaps as a true freshman trying to block for Caleb Williams. I think you're okay. And I think they're going to get one of these veteran transfer guys. And then I think you're going to be pretty good. So yeah, I mean, no, not a lot of concerns. I think the difference becomes that line last year had played together so much. When you're talking about Andrew Voorhees, you're talking about Brett Nealon and Justin Deej being in there and Monheim, even with Bobby Haskins coming over. There was so much familiarity in that group. How quickly can this group, with maybe guys at a bunch of different positions, and you're talking about potentially 3 brand new guys this year all playing together, how quickly does that gel? We've also seen that this USC culture that Lincoln Riley's brought over, there aren't a lot of questions with that. These guys are really good at kind of coming together, common goal, playing in this offense and doing pretty well. So I think they're okay. I think they have a chance to be pretty darn good once all the pieces get in place here.
Yeah, I think that I was really excited about Ethan White. I watched tape on him. I thought that Ethan White could be the difference between having a good offensive line and a very good offensive line. I think that Chris touched on Quinones as giving a great effort, but maybe not quite as physically as they would like that spot to be, which is not a rip on Gino at all. But I thought that White was going to really bring a physicality to that line like Voorhees did. Doesn't mean it's still not going to happen if Johnson from Houston comes over. He is decorated for the conference that he was in. If he slots in, I think what I'm interested in is I don't think they're quite done yet. And we know what they're doing because we see these official visits, but I think that the freshman from Texas A&M, the center, I think it's Wyckoff, is in the transfer portal. And if he actually came to SC or becomes Plan B or whatever they have, and he came over, it's possible that you could maybe, first of all, you'd be getting your possibly your future center, the guy was an all SEC freshman team, but you could also get him. Maybe it could affect Justin Dedich in an emergency situation playing left guard, since he does know the guard spot. So I think they're going to be okay. I think Johnson, is going to come. And it'll play itself out, but I think, like we all agree on, the whole dimension of Caleb Williams changes the whole set of what an offensive line will be. So with that, let's talk about another commitment that SC got last week from Texas high school running back Brian Jackson. And apparently they're now firmly in the hunt based on his own Twitter social media feed. The nation's #2 running back in the country, Taylor Tatum, another Texan. Panel, your thoughts on the running back room expansion. Is it possible that the 2024 Trojan running backs will consist of an all-back room from Texas? And what does that say about the high school running back talent in California? Is it a big deal who cares where they come from, Marc Kulkin? Is there a method to the madness here? Are they trying to match up running backs' size and speed and quickness? What are they doing here?
They're looking for the best guys out there who want to be Trojans, bottom line. And if they happen to be coming from Texas, and Kyle McDonald has a strong relationship, strong relationships built down there, as well as Lincoln Riley and the staff. You keep mining until you run out. This particular running back is going to be perfect for when USC moves over into the big conference. And he's a big, thick downhill runner, and that's going to work well. You need to have that balance. You can have all the Rayleigh Browns and the Quentin Joyners, all the exciting jitterbug type of running backs, but you still need to have those big, powerful, wear you down type of running backs, and that's what he is. So I'm good with it. I think it's great. Does it make a difference that USC isn't getting any from California? They're still recruiting, and if 2 come from Texas and only 1 comes from California, at this point with the transfer portal, I don't think it really matters. You're seeing players move all across the country every day. So I don't think it matters anymore. At a certain point, at one time, put a fence around your backyard. Don't let anybody leave. As long as you're getting the best players in your backyard, go get the best players in somebody else's backyard at the same time.
Well, speaking of backyards, nobody knows at least the backyard of Texas high school football because he lives there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Chris, is this a big deal or not a big deal getting all these Texas running backs? And is there any concern that you start piling running backs on there and it does affect future recruiting in California?
First of all, there are lots of people who know high school Texas football a lot better than I do. But you're right, I do live here, and I was at McKinney High School just last week. I don't think I saw Brian Jackson there. So I trust Lincoln Riley and Kyle McDonald when it comes to backs. They both, at 2 different schools, did a remarkable job at finding guys, sometimes under the radar guys, and turning them into superstars. So if Brian Jackson is their guy, I'm on board. Mark is right. This is a big dude. I mean, I think he's a good 230 or so now, which means he's probably going to play at 250 or so at USC. That's a big back. And he's not the most highly rated guy in the world, but if you watch his highlights, seems to move pretty well for a big guy. And it's not like he's playing at a low level of high school football. McKinney plays some pretty good football teams out here. And the one thing you realize when you start watching Texas high school football is that a lot of the talent is spread out. In California, there are probably 5 high schools that supply 90% of the blue chip recruits. It's not really true in Texas, and throughout DFW, you can go just about every game and you're going to see a D1 player on the field. So the highlights that you're seeing are coming against good teams and teams with real athletes. So I'm excited about Jackson. I'm excited to think they may land Taylor Tatum, who looks like a game breaker, and we'll see if that happens. In the old days, if you go to Texas and find a guy who's marginally better than the guy you can get in California, the California guy you pass up is going to land in the Pac-12. You're going to play him over and over again. And every time you play him, the only thing in his life that matters is beating USC because he got snubbed by USC. I don't know that that's true anymore, right? I mean, whatever California backs they pass up, USC is probably only going to see him once as true freshmen. And so I think the calculus changes a little bit. And Lincoln Riley and his staff have deep contacts in Texas. You have to recruit Texas right now if you're USC. That's where you're going to find your defensive linemen. Apparently, that's where you're going to find your running backs. A lot of good running backs in Texas too. So USC has to recruit Texas, and they're going to continue to recruit Texas. And so I don't see this as being a problem. I think it's probably a good thing. Continue to pull people out of Texas and keep that pipeline going. They're still going to be fine with Southern California high schools, especially if USC wins over the next couple of years the way I think they're going to win. When USC is winning, they do not have a hard time recruiting Southern California. I think they'll be fine.
Erik, is the running back stock down in California from your point of view? You know, I was going to say that Najee Harris is probably the last, for me, the really big running back stud. I think he was out of Richmond, California, Northern California. How does all this playing out with Texas and California? Is this something to be alarmed about? How do you see it?
I mean, I wrote a story probably 10 years ago now about how California running backs are non-existent anymore. So yeah, I mean, it's been a long time that this California running back draft. Now, you got Nate Frazier at Mater Dei, I think is phenomenal. So they're still here. You still have your guys, but Kyle McDonald gets to recruit whoever he wants. Like that, he's developed that reputation and he's found success both in who he finds and how he develops them, and he knows who he's going to work well with. He's good. Whatever he wants to go, whoever he wants to go after, that's fine with me. He has deep ties in Texas, and we've talked about that both with him and with Lincoln Riley. Texas is a state that they're going to be able to go recruit. And I think you're okay. I mean, Chris kind of hit on it too. When USC's not winning, you had better pay a lot of attention to LA kids and Southern California kids, because their attention's going to go. And then when you need them, you're not going to get them. If you can win with anybody, the local kids are going to be USC fans, and they're going to go there. They're going to go there with a team, with a quarterback from back east, with running backs from Texas, with defensive linemen from Louisiana and Florida, whatever it is. If you're winning at USC, you're going to get the Southern California kids, because that's still the team they're watching and the team that they want to go be a part of. So I think it's different when your program is the way it's going right now compared to when you're winning 7-8 games and kind of struggling and trying to keep their attention. You'd better go all in on recruiting those local kids. So no, I don't think it's an issue. I think it's going to be, I mean, Lincoln Riley has made no bones about we're going to get the best roster we can, however that comes from. If that's high school recruiting, if that's transfer portal, if that's local kids, if that's international kids, if that's kids from the Midwest or the South or back East or wherever it is, at that position, we want the best player. And so if you go out and you see Texas running backs, that's what you're going to bring in. Because I think we've seen now, once they get to USC, you're a USC kid. You fit in here, and they've done a really good job of kind of building that locker room right now to where Marion Peterson comes in and Quentin Joyner comes in, and they're not Texas backs anymore. They're USC running backs. And I think they've done a really good job of that. So again, if Brian Jackson's a guy that showed early interest, which he did in USC, and the USC coaches kind of targeted him, we've seen that. We got, Tackett Curtis in Louisiana, that interest in USC, it kind of caught you, oh, he's really looking at this. Brian Odom was out there as often as he could. These coaches are good at kind of developing those relationships with those kids that are out there nationally. And that they're not afraid to go after them early and kind of say, hey, you're my top guy for this spot. So no, I think it's a big win. Again, he's not a 5-star, big time guy chased by everybody, but he had some interest from some big schools. So I think Kyle McDonald, absolutely, I can work with this guy. I see where he's going to be in 2, 3, 4 years. So again, I'm on board with whoever he wants to bring in.
Yeah, and I'm on board with him. I think he's a tremendous coach. I think he's proven it. He proved it at Utah when he was coaching there for Kyle Whittingham. I think he's more than shown that he's the real deal coach, so to speak. He's certainly the best running back coach I've seen there since Dylan was it
McCullough.
Dylan McDonald? I'm getting what's that?
Dalen McCullough.
McCullough, correct. That's right. Who's now at Notre Dame, I might add. But this guy definitely, if he's going to recruit a 3-star, I have no problem with it. I go and watch the film. I think I can see some of the things that he's seeing, and he's going to be coaching him. So if whoever he recruits is fine by me. I know they're going to turn out to be better players. And isn't that what everyone at SC has been clamoring about, player development? And I have all the faith in the world with Lincoln Riley and McDonald, getting guys out of the port, whatever. I don't care where they come from, as long as they provide USC with a championship performance. I'm all for it. So with that, let's move on to we talked about this when it was in the proposal stage, but now it was passed on Friday. The NCAA Playing Rules Oversight Panel approved a series of changes for the 2023 season. The Rules Committee approved a new rule that the game clock would run after first downs in all divisions except Division III. However, the clock will stop during the final 2 minutes of each half, which makes it a different sort of ball game than in the NFL in some ways. Panel, your thoughts on the specific rule change, how it's going to affect USC's style of play. And I'm going to add just, I've been going to a lot of baseball games as a season ticket holder for the Dodgers. And I didn't think it would make that big a difference, but I was definitely wrong. That pitch clock made a big difference in shortening the game. Now people are saying it's not long enough, but from your thoughts on specific rule change, the one we just talked about, the clock moving, is this going to be a good thing for USC with the clock really moving? That means less offensive plays, I would suspect. Erik, is this a good rule, bad rule? What do you think?
Well, the rule is whatever, right? If we're talking about how this affects USC, I could spin it a little bit into being a positive for USC. If they are kind of as explosive as you anticipate a Lincoln Riley offense to be, then the idea would be they can still score kind of at that pace that they want to run at. And if it's fewer plays for the opposition, then the USC defense is out on the field for less time throughout the course of a game or a season. I think I saw that the expectation is this cuts like 7 plays out of a game or something like that, which at that point, I'm not totally sure what we're doing. But again, talking about, is this going to hurt USC's offense? No, I think they'd have to let a rule where a defense could play with like 16 guys on the field for anything to really start affecting what the USC offense might be able to do this year. I think it'll be kind of a quick change for everybody, but USC, I think when they feel good about it, wants to go kind of as fast as anybody. So I don't know really how much this changes anything for the USC offense. But if it's 7 fewer plays for the opposing offense, that could be a good thing for the USC defense. If again it's anything like what went out there for parts of last year.
Mark, is this a good thing for SC, this new rule?
First of all, who asked for this rule change? I mean, I don't know.
Mark's getting fired up. All right, here we go.
Erik already touched on it. We're talking about eliminating 7 to 8 plays for an entire game. It's not for one team. It's over the course of a game. And to say that it's going to speed up the process, but at the same time, keep the college game's integrity so much different and unique from the NFL game. Well, they're also trying to incorporate the rule where if you have a penalty at the end of a quarter, instead of playing an untimed down, carry it over to the next quarter. Well, if you're trying to maintain the integrity and the uniqueness, let's not put in a hockey rule where the penalty carries over to the next period. I don't like it. Again, who's asking for it? I know it's not the TV networks who are paying billions of dollars to sell advertising. So the players, are they asking for it? If it's under the guise of player safety, but all the data, there isn't any. It's all unsubstantiated. So in a world of let's follow the science, show me the science. Otherwise, leave the game alone. Let's keep the college game the way it is. That's
All right, Chris, here's your shot. Kulkin has opened the door. Cracking.
No, I mean, I don't need to take a shot at Mark.
Of course not. You never would. Of course, we know that, right?
That's right. We're very close.
You're very compassionate.
But I'm not worked up over the rule. I don't think a loss of 7 plays has a dramatic impact on much of anything. It shortens the average game time by 7 minutes. And maybe there are people who think college football games go too long. I don't. I don't care how long they go. Well, you know what? I do care when they start when they have those 7:30 Pacific starts, and I'm in Texas, and the game comes on at 9:30. The kickoff is like 9:40, and I have to stay up till 1 a.m. Now I'll do that, but there was a time at the end of Clay's tenure that I was not able to do it. It gets to about midnight, and USC looks like garbage and we're down 10. I'd say, screw it. I'll just wake up in the morning and watch the rest of this. So I guess I care a little bit how long they go. I don't think it affects much. It's not a significant enough change. The shorter the game is, the more likely an upset is, though. If you have the better team over the long haul will eventually win, and anomalies are more likely to occur if you have a smaller data set, right? If you flip a coin 1,000 times, you're going to get roughly 500 and 500. If you flip it 7 times, who knows what you're going to get? That's an exaggeration, but it's the same concept. The longer the game goes on, the more likely it is that the better team will eventually assert dominance. I don't think 7 plays changes everything, but there are certainly plenty of games that come down to the last 7 plays. And so I think this makes it marginally more likely that you will have upsets in college football. It's not going to be a huge difference, but marginally more likely. And because USC is going to be one of the more talented teams in the country, I think that this probably has a marginally, a very modest negative effect for USC. But it's very modest. I'm not worked up about it like Kulkin is. Kulkin is very conservative when it comes to his college football. He doesn't like to see things change. Makes him very angry. But I'm more of an open-minded, progressive guy. So I'm open to all these. I'm open to what all these crazy kids are doing at the NCAA.
Look, you did what a beautiful. You got Mark laughing. It's a good day now. Look, I'm going to disagree with Chris on this one. I think it's going to be have a big effect for USC, and I'll tell you why. SC has got the ability next year to score from anywhere on the field. They've got skilled players. I mean, they could be just absolutely go on a scoring binge, as we know they were able to do last year. I think they're going to have a bigger quick strike tendency now. And what I think this does is for a team like Utah, for Utah to beat USC normally, they want to make the game shorter. They want to have 70-yard drives and 15 plays if they can do it. And if SC is going to continue to score like they do, and which I think they're going to do, it's going to put a lot more pressure on Utah to get out of its comfort zone, and other schools that play USC. In 7 plays, I would agree sounds modest, but that's just on the average. But if you're going to have less plays to, it's almost like people were concerned the shot clock in basketball at college level, how that would affect a lot of schools at the time period. I remember when Fresno State was very good in basketball, they would drain the clock, no clock, and they would control it. I think ball control teams are going to be really challenged against high-powered offenses that can strike in a hurry. So it's going to be really interesting to see, I think, in the first several games how USC manages, because San Jose State doesn't want to give SC the ball too many times on offense. Are they going to try to ball control SC? Well, if they fall behind in a hurry, which they probably will, they're going to be out of their comfort zone, not just their game plan. So that's just one rule. There is, and
Wait. Before you get
okay,
too far,
okay, here we go.
No,
Here
no,
we go.
I'm
Fire
gonna be,
up.
I'm gonna be nice and I'm gonna be polite. I'm just gonna say that I think you're contradicting yourself, Greg. On one hand, you say that teams like Utah want to shorten the game, and you're right. They want to have less plays, less possession. Stanford has been doing that for years. And then you're talking about a rule change that quite literally shortens the game, and you say it's bad for Utah and good for USC. I don't even know what you're talking about now. It's not. It's not. Less possessions is good for the team that is not the high scoring team. If any of USC's opponents had the choice of having just one possession for each team be the entire football game, they'd all take it. Because if USC has the ball 14 times, they're going to score 10. But maybe one of those 4 will be on the one possession. The fewer possessions each team has, the more likely it is the ball control and lesser team is going to win the football game.
My esteemed colleague, who I put you at the pedestal of our panel, right? Here's the deal. Don't you think that a team that needs to have the ball to be effective 10, 15 plays is going to be under the gun? Don't you see that shortening of their ability to quick strike score and keep up in a shortened game is going to have an effect on their ability to upset USC?
No, if USC's opponents could, they would hold the ball for 29 minutes and 30 seconds in both halves and hold USC to 2 short possessions. The less plays USC gets, the less possessions USC gets, the happier they are. So any rule that's going to shorten the game and lead to less plays and less possessions is good for the Utahs. It's good for the Stanfords. It's not good for the USCs. The more times Caleb Williams is going to score 80% of the time he has the ball. So the less possessions he has, the more chance you have of scoring as many points as USC has scored.
Well, I don't think the possessions for him are an issue. I think, like you pointed out, he's going to score and score and score. SC will need less possessions by the style they play because they're quick strike, or schools like Utah and, as you appropriately said, Stanford, they need to hold on to the ball, and they're not going to be able to have these drives like they want if SC scores the way we think they do. But that being said, let's just kind of complete the rule changes. 2 other rule changes, and Mark touched on this. We're past for the 2023 season. Teams will no longer, they will now be prohibited from calling consecutive team timeouts, and penalties at the end of the first and third quarters, Mark pointed out, will carry over and be enforced on the first play of the next quarter. Any thoughts on these particular additions? Is it going to affect anything, Erik?
No, they don't matter. It's dumb. Let's go.
Mark?
Nobody's going to realize that these are rules.
Wow, that was a great impression of Mark. Mark, can you do an impression of Erik?
As far as the back-to-back timeouts, I'm fine with that. If you want to give a back-to-back timeout, make that second one 15 seconds or less, just long enough to acknowledge it and have everybody line back up to kick the field goal.
And the timeout rule is a good rule, because I'm tired of watching 3 timeouts before a kicker kicks a kick at the end of the half of the game.
Like I said, I'm fine with that. If you're going to leave it, just make it literally, we acknowledge it, great, line up, do it again. Other than that, I'm fine.
Chris, are you fine?
No, I already told you what I thought. That's a good rule. I'm tired of watching somebody ice a kicker with 3 straight timeouts. That's stupid. It's just stupid. I hate that.
Well, I think what they should do is they should just request 3 timeouts. Don't wait for it to come back and then say, and now they called another timeout. And now they come in, just say they're calling 3 straight timeouts, like an intentional walk in baseball. All right, just give us 5 minutes off, and then just let us know what's going on. I don't think either rule affects anything. I could care less. All right. Second half kickoff, here we go. It's coming up within, we're the show starts on Tuesday. Some of you will be watching this on Thursday. But nonetheless, the NFL is holding its draft this week in Kansas City. It starts on Thursday. I think it runs through Saturday. What former Trojans do you see being drafted? What round and why? Chris Arledge, how do you see the draft? Tell me your names. What round do you think they'll be taken in, and why?
Jordan Addison will go late in the first round. I think he was expected to go a little bit higher than. I don't think he ran as fast as they expected him to, but he'll still be a first round choice. He'll probably go to a good team, so it'll probably be good for him. Voorhees and Thule are probably both 3rd to 4th round picks. I don't know how much the ACL injury is going to hurt Voorhees. He may tumble another round or two, since you're not going to have him for probably this coming year at all. But those guys are both 3rd to 4th round picks. Thule in that range is probably a really solid pickup, because I think he's going to be a contributor who's going to stick around in the league for a long time. Mekhi Blackmon is going to get drafted. I think he's going to get drafted later than he should. I think he's a pretty good player, but it doesn't look like anybody sees him as a high pick. So I'm gonna say 5th round for him, and I think that may be it. Travis Dye may get picked late, but Travis Dye doesn't have the physical skills that most NFL teams want. He's not very big. He's not very fast. He's just a really good football player. But I think that's going to weigh against him. He's probably a free agent pickup. Brett Nealon the same. I just think he's too small for the NFL to get excited about him. Although again, he's a good football player. He's probably a free agent pickup. And what that tells you is that this past USC team did not have a lot of dominant upperclassmen. Whereas I think next year you'll see a very different scenario, which is what you'd expect from a team that's an elite program. USC this year will have a draft like it is not an elite program yet.
All right, Erik, how's the draft going to look?
No, that all sounds fine. I'm on board with that. Maybe Addison slips like early second. I think it's been interesting where when there was a lot of talk about him being the first wide receiver, you don't hear quite that much about him in that mix, talking about like 12 to 15, maybe 20, but late first round, I could see for him. Thule's had kind of the same drop as the season ended, and we're getting closer and closer to the draft. There was a lot of talk about him maybe at the end of the first round, or definitely a 2nd round pick. I could see 3 to 4. And again, I could see him being another USC player that outplays where he goes in the draft. And Voorhees, same kind of thing, round 3, round 4. I think Mekhi Blackmon probably should go around there, but yeah, I can see 5th, 6th, and I think that's probably it. I think those are the 4. I think multiple teams will probably try to take a run at Travis Dye to sign him after the draft. He's a guy that you want to bring in, but again, if a guy went out and ran a 4.3, you're going to roll the dice on picking him and then bringing Travis Dye in as an undrafted free agent, I think. And then the other guys might see time too. Nick Figueroa, I think Brandon Peely are probably the other 2 names to mention as potential undrafted guys that land somewhere and at least get a look somewhere. But I think 4 is definitely kind of the safe number. And then I think Addison probably adds to that tally of 1st round picks for USC.
All right, Mark, you like to call it your bingo card, but for this exercise, we'll call it your draft card. How's it looking for you? Where are they going?
Yeah, look, Addison, I think everyone assumes is still going to go 1st round. I suppose that would be the surprise if he dropped to the 2nd day. But, the talk has been one of the Giants, maybe the Chargers, maybe Philadelphia. Voorhees, I'm more bullish on him. I think his performance at the combine on one leg is going to enhance his draft status. So I could see him going on day 2, although, guards typically don't go high unless they are, game breakers, game changers. So I could see him being day 2, day 3. Thule, look, just put on his game film and be the team that isn't going to regret passing him up a round earlier. Is he a day 2? Is he day 3? I don't know. He's going to fall somewhere in there, in my opinion. Mekhi Blackmon, value pick wherever you get him at. And then as far as the other guys, I'm a big fan of Brett. Whether or not he has the measurables that an NFL roster wants at center, I don't know. But I think he'll get drafted. He'll be probably a last day. And then the other guys, undrafted free agents. Travis Dye is that borderline guy just because, he doesn't do anything spectacular, but he's going to be a solid contributor on any roster that he makes. Maybe he's destined to be the Mr. Irrelevant. Who knows? It just seems apropos for him.
All right, I'll make mine quick here. I think Addison goes late first round. Tuipulotu middle to late second round. I see Voorhees going in the sixth round because of the leg thing. Blackman probably mid sixth round. I tend to agree with you on all of you with Dye. I think I'm not sure. I'm pulling for Dye. I think he's a football player. I know seventh round would be ego. I got drafted. But I'm not so sure his best bet isn't signing as a free agent at a place that he could play. I think he can make the roster. He's just a football player, and we've seen over the years guys that are like that stick in the NFL. They're, if not just for special teams, he knows what he's doing, and we wish him the best of luck. Now, looking ahead, and we don't need a long explanation on any, but just your list of whatever. Who do you see being selected in the 2024 NFL draft? And I put why, but if you feel you want to just go through a quick list, that's fine. Chris, who do you see going in the 2024 draft? It could be a whopper, actually.
Yeah, I think USC probably gets 10 players drafted next year. Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall. Marshawn Lloyd's probably going to get drafted. He's a running back, and running backs tend to be undervalued these days. Kalen Bullock is going to be drafted. Mason Cobb's going to be drafted. Jacoby Covington is. You got 4 wide receivers who all are eligible and could be drafted. I'm thinking Dorian Singer may sneak into the 3rd or 4th round. And you're going to have about 4 offensive linemen who could get drafted. And I'm going to say Jonah Monheim is going to be a top, maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick. So you've got, I think they're going to have 10 guys get drafted next year, and they're going to have a pretty decent showing on the first day or two.
All right, Eric, who are we looking at the 24 draft? Is it going to be a whopper?
I mean, 10 might be disappointing in terms of the potential of who could go. And when you're talking about the potential of what guys could show this year. I'd say that a little bit tongue in cheek. 10 would certainly be a great year for any school, but even just kind of looking down the list and not really even projecting a ton of 3-year guys or 4-year guys with another year of eligibility, you can get there. Caleb Williams is going to be the next USC player to go number 1 overall. And then you mentioned, I think a lot of it depends on what some of these defensive linemen show this year, right? Does Keon Barnes prove that he's an NFL pick? Jack Sullivan, same thing. I think Mason Cobb is in there too. What do they show, right? Because there's a big difference between being a good college player who can't quite get drafted and get signed to a free agent deal, and a guy who's an absolute surefire NFL draft pick. But you mentioned Jonah Monheim. Does he take off early? Marshawn Lloyd's in that discussion, I think, based on what he might be able to do this year. Christian Roll-Wallace and Jacoby Covington maybe at cornerback, a couple of guys, depending on the seasons they have. So, yeah, I mean, I could pretty easily jot down 12 to 15 names of, if things go well this year, that they could absolutely be picked in the next draft.
Mark, are we going to see a stampede of Trojans in the 24 draft?
Yeah, you're definitely going to have double-digit numbers. I don't need to repeat the names that Chris and Eric have already rattled off. So from the optics point of view, it's going to look great. Recruits are going to notice it. Transfer portal players are going to continue to notice it, and USC will just now, hopefully, they're going to be back into that. Let's just develop that pipeline and become that NFL factory that they were known for during the Pete Carroll years. So yeah, they're close. They're real close. And again, I don't disagree. You're going to have at least 10 players in the draft next year, hearing their names called. And then a handful of others that'll go in, undrafted free agents.
Yeah, I think there'll be as many as 16 players taken in the NFL draft. I would be surprised if there was, if there was less than 14, I would be shocked. But I think when you take a look at the guys that could go, I think the bottom line message to me is this: for the transfer players, come to USC. We can develop you. You'll get drafted, and that, of course, will expand into selling to high school players. So it's going to be a whopper. There's no doubt about it. So let's move on here to the final part of this NFL deal. I thought this would be an interesting quick take here. Although there are a lot of choices that you could choose from, but what former USC football player selected in any NFL draft surprised you by turning out to be better in the NFL than at USC? We may all be in consensus on this, but Chris, what name or couple names strike you as they were better in the NFL than they were at USC?
I mean, Matt Castle's the obvious choice, right?
Obvious.
I've seen a lot of USC players who I didn't think would be great in the NFL, but turned out to be pretty good football players. I don't think I've ever seen a guy who never started a game at USC that plays, 10 years in the NFL, starts for almost an entire season and wins 11 games. I mean, that doesn't happen. So I think he's the obvious choice. The guy had no touchdown passes at USC, no starts, threw for 192 yards in 4 years. That's not exactly the resume of a longtime NFL player, but he did it.
Erik?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to go with somebody else, Everson Griffin maybe would pop up for me. I think that there was some, maybe he didn't quite live up to what you expected of him at USC, and then he goes to the NFL and becomes, I mean, for a couple of years, just a dominant force on the defensive line there. So again, Castle's the right answer, but if I have to go with somebody else, Griffin, I think is a good choice.
Mark, is it Castle or somebody else for you?
No, it's Matt Castle, but so we can throw out another name. And this was, I'm probably stretching on this one. Anthony Munoz did not play a lot when he was at USC. He was injured frequently.
That's a good one. No, that's actually pretty good.
but he turned out to be in the NFL is, Hall of Fame, left tackle, and the rest is history. So again, it's kind of a stretch. When he was playing at USC, he was really good, but he became the man when he got to the NFL.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Matt Castle because here's the real rub to me. Matt Castle, as you've already said, had this pretty good career in the NFL. He lasted a heck of a lot longer than Matt Leinart did, and Matt Leinart won the Heisman Trophy. So, everybody has their little niche, but what a story for Castle. Okay, let's get to overtime. This is a good overtime because we didn't get to those last week because of some time issues here. So let's get right to the questions from our listeners that we held on to some of them from last week. We have some new ones from this week. So from Trojans Forever in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I love Miller Moss and his loyalty to the Trojans. If he was needed to step into the starting lineup with Lincoln's Riley's guidance, do you think he could lead the Trojans to a championship? Jump in, guys.
Yes,
Kenny?
Absolutely.
What kind of championship? A national championship?
Well, there's no specifics on that.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is it
zero chance that Miller Moss leads USC to a national championship? Even with Caleb Williams as Superman, USC is a heavy underdog to Georgia or Alabama or a team like that in the playoff. But could USC win the Pac-12 with Miller Moss? Sure, I could see that happening. The Pac-12 isn't an easy conference to win either, but I could see that happening. But no, if USC is going to win a national title, they have to have Caleb Williams, and he has to be healthy Caleb Williams, running around being Superman.
Wow, all that faith in Lincoln Riley and Cliff Kingsbury to develop quarterbacks and talented quarterbacks just out the window if it's not Caleb Williams. Amazing.
I'm not even going to argue the point with you, Mark. You're just being silly at this point.
Erik, jot that down. Chris is not going to argue a point.
It's jotted.
Okay. I think Miller Moss could lead him to a championship. It depends on how the rest of the team and the defense plays. National championship, not so sure. Question 2 from JCW USC in Palm Desert, California. Could the panel explain the difference in personnel groupings? I hear occasionally mentioned as 10 personnel, 11 personnel, and I believe I heard 21 personnel once. What does each imply? And I'm missing other groups. Nomenclature's right on. Anybody want to volunteer what 10 and 11 and 21 mean?
It's
It's
basically,
just it's the number of running backs and then the number of tight ends. So 10 is one running back, 0 tight ends. Those numbers are going to have to add up to 5 or less, considering you've got 5 offensive linemen and a quarterback. So you could have 14 personnel or 41 or whatever you want to call it. But that's how it is. I think the interesting thing
I don't know
again
if you
is
could have 41 personnel, Eric, because if you have a quarterback and you have 4 running backs, you now have 5 guys in the backfield. I don't know about
well, you go, but they'll line up, and that's kind of the point. Is you're getting interesting groupings now where you've got these tight end wide receivers. Where what do you call that guy when he goes out on the field and you've got the other team yelling, "Oh, they're in 11 or whatever." Then he goes up and he's a wide receiver and can play like a wide receiver. That's where a Deuce Robinson, somebody like that, kind of puts you in trouble, and why you're seeing, guys like Travis Kelce and all these tight ends in the NFL have a lot of success because they put you in trouble with where you don't exactly know what personnel grouping there is, because a Raleek Brown goes out and he's like, well, is he a running back? Is he a wide receiver? And you can do a lot of different stuff with those guys.
All right. From Woody and Tarzan, California. Panel, USC's 3 non-conference games in 2023 are San Jose State, Nevada, Notre Dame. If you could substitute 1 or 2 of these games with another team, who would you want as a replacement? Who would you rather see instead of San Jose State or Nevada? I'm sure you want Notre Dame, but is there a team that you'd like to see that replace them?
with the second half of the schedule this year, no. I mean, I'm never excited about a San Jose State or a Nevada game, but the last half of this schedule is the toughest run that anybody has in the country. So I wouldn't be eager about saying, yeah, let's get rid of San Jose State and take Clemson on the road. Right? I mean, that doesn't even make sense. We got enough problems as it is. Let's just leave it alone.
No, but in a vacuum, I'd replace San Jose State and Nevada with Notre Dame twice and just play them 3 times in a row. Not looking at the full schedule.
Brutal.
For entertainment purposes, load it up. If we, putting aside trying to win the championship, I like the old days when USC's out of conference schedule was Arkansas, Notre Dame, and a third Power 5 team. So I'd love to go back to that. And again, with the 12-team playoff coming up, strength of schedule, you're going to see more 2 and 3 loss teams making the playoffs coming out of the SEC and the big conference. So if your losses are coming against Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and those are your 2 losses, I don't think it's really going to hurt you.
Okay, from John in the Inland Empire, I enjoyed the spring game, but what changes would you make for future spring games, either on or off the field? I will just say this, I'm happy with the way the spring game is now. I think that Lincoln Riley's done a great job. He leaves you wanting more, but at least you're watching a game compared to what the other guy did when we had a thud spring game.
Yeah, I think the game is fine, right? A half of football and you get to see enough of it. I think they could do more to, carnival atmosphere for all the people that are there and make it more of a day. I mean, Lincoln Riley said that coming in, hey, we're in and out. We're gonna play some football and then we're out of there. I think there's, you could set some stuff up in the parking lot and make it sort of a fan fest to bring fans out there. I also understand that it's just one of 15 practices for the team. And so that's what they're to do that's what they're there to do, get their work in and then go. But I do feel like last year there was more of a sort of fan friendly environment, bringing people out for the day.
All right. Question 5 from Trojan Mike in Dallas to the chief historian of USC football, fact or fiction. After the 1970 game versus Bama, Sam Cunningham was taken to the Tide's locker room and surrounded by Bama players. Coach Bryant reportedly told the team, "This is what a football player looks like." Fact or fiction? I think it's fiction. I've heard a lot of comments that it didn't happen, but it sounds good. And somebody took something out of context. It's not unusual for players to go into the other locker room if it's close and congratulate somebody. I know that Kevin Bruce told me that after he played in the 1970 5 Rose Bowl, which was the 74 season. He had a massive battle with All-American offensive tackle Kurt Schumacher, and he went in to see him, and Schumacher was cut all over his face, beat up, and that was compliments of Kevin. And of course, Kevin respected Schumacher because Schumacher did the same thing to him. So, but to my knowledge, I think that's been basically a fiction in the way it actually happened. I think Cunningham didn't say it happened. So that's my understanding of it. Question 6 from Scott in Gilbert, Arizona. My question is this USC roster the most talented roster that Lincoln Riley has ever coached, Oklahoma included? Perspectives?
Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. If you look just at NFL draft picks, his 2019 roster had what? 8 guys get drafted, and
2018, right? Because that'd be the 2019 draft.
That's right. 2018 team, 2019 draft. Yeah, and 6 of those were in the top 4 rounds, including 4 offensive linemen, a running back, a wide receiver, and a quarterback that went number 1 overall. That's a pretty impressive offensive draft class, but the defensive draft, there's no showing by any defensive players, which, maybe a red flag. We'll see, guys. But yeah, I mean, USC may be able to beat that this year. We'll see. But he had some good teams in Oklahoma, so this is not obvious to me.
I'm willing to trade the draft results a year from now for a playoff result this year, because I think that will balance the scales as far as, is this his best team? That's all Trojan fans are going to care about. Just get back to the top of the hill. Everything else will sort itself out after that.
All right, question 7 from Trojan from Boulder to Birmingham. Hello, guys. This is Boulder to Birmingham from Santa Clarita. This is directed at Mark or Erik. Now that Bear is on board, that's Bear Alexander. Any thoughts about where USC stands with O-lineman Cam Johnson, Wyckoff of A&M, or Pregnon from Wyoming? I think we talked about this. Any other portal players to be focused on? Thanks for all that you do. And again, we thank you for watching and participating in the question and answer part here. Is there anything you don't know?
He cut us out, Greg. Look at the question. He cut you and me out. Why are you thanking him? Hey, Boulder, I'm not okay with that. Look, it's true that I'm not a recruiting expert, but I'm not an expert in any of the other things we talk about either. But I still have answers.
Look, we're going to direct the Texas high school football questions your way.
That's right.
He's
okay.
Mr. Tech. He's what was the name? Campbell. Texas Football Magazine?
Yeah, Dave Campbell, I think.
David Campbell. Yeah, I used to subscribe to it, and we're just going to call you the Chris Arledge Texas Football Report. I think it's a whole new thing for you to get into.
That's fine. I still have a beef with Boulder, though.
Hey, all right. Is there any other portal players that we do not know about that could possibly be on the horizon? Anybody want to volunteer with any knowledge of that?
I mean, Scott Trader on the site, right? He had a story about a potential visit from Alabama cornerback Triquan Fegans, and so he's a guy that USC, when they bring in transfer portal players for official visits, the success rate is very high. The 2 offensive linemen coming in for visits, I'm going to go ahead and say USC has a really good chance with them. When you're talking about, Wyckoff from Texas A&M, does he come out for a visit, right? These guys, they want to see the school, they want to do that. So that's always, when it comes to transfer portal guys, if they get an offer from USC or interest from USC, that's one level. If they get out to USC and take that visit, I'm going to go ahead and bet that USC is going to be able to seal the deal on that. And then it'll just be numbers. If they bring out, let's say, 4 guys for 1 spot, then you got to see how it shakes out. But USC is not going to waste their time tripping guys in that they don't feel like they have a shot with when it comes to the transfer portal.
Yeah, they're looking for
Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
They're looking for specific talented guys to fill holes. but it's still, the process is character over talent, do the vetting process. If they're seriously interested, as Erik just said, they're going to make the visit. And at that point, it's really coming down to dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making one of those first 4 guys who are vying for that spot to jump through the hoop first. That's what it's at with USC's transfer portal.
All right, question 8 from B. Davis 711 in Irvine. With the addition of Bear Alexander, and possible additions on the offensive line, and I think we can just answer this yes or no. Do you think the odds have gone up for USC's college football playoff chances? I say yes. What about the rest of you?
Do I have your permission,
Yeah.
Chris, to say yes?
Mark, you don't have to ask for my permission. I think Boulder from Birmingham wants to hear from you. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, the answer obviously is yes. USC has a top 5 roster this year and the best player in college football. They just have a really tough back half of the schedule.
All right. Question 9 from Takashi in Beaverton, Oregon. With the Trojans leaving the Pac-12 after this season, will they ever play Oregon again? Chris, we should start off with you on this. You're appropriate to answer this question.
Yeah, I think we will. I mean, look at this year's schedule. They have San Jose and Nevada. I mean, there are going to be years when you can't get San Jose on the schedule, but you need a small time program that you can just have a home game and no return trip. So I could see us playing Oregon multiple times.
Do you put the TV streak on the line though? Playing them, just hoping somebody picks that game up?
Well, I think it'll be on the CW at the very least.
Oh, the poor CW's taking a lot of heat over that, hasn't it? Oh boy.
Yeah.
I think they'll play Oregon again. Who knows? Maybe down the line they'll be playing Oregon in the Big Ten at some point. Who knows?
You could see a playoff game too. I mean, if again, like if the Pac-12 hangs on to the Power 5 conference and their conference winner gets a spot in the playoffs, that's not the worst place for Oregon to be, where all you have to do is beat out a handful of other teams that maybe aren't totally serious about football and find your way into the playoff.
Well, I could see a first round game if they go by first round is you get a home game. I could see television loving a West Coast matchup of the Big Ten Trojans versus the Pac-12 or whatever they're going to be, Oregon. I could see that happening. Kind of fun, actually. All right.
USC's going to want to keep a West Coast, out of conference game every year, at least one. So you just put them on the rotation. You got Cal, you got Stanford, you got Oregon State, you got Oregon, you got the Washington schools, you got the Arizona schools. So they're going to play them. It's just what year and, where are they in line? I'd put them at the end of the line, to Chris's point.
All right. The final question, number 10, this is from Dylan in Spokane, Washington. Who's next at quarterback? I was really pulling for Elijah Brown and all the MD kids, that's modern day kids, to come with, but that looks unlikely. Okay. Does anyone have an answer for this?
I don't know why everybody assumes that if you get the modern day quarterback, you're going to get the whole rest of the modern day roster. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. It never works that way. Stop assuming it. Lincoln Riley's not going to have trouble getting a quarterback. If he doesn't get the quarterback he wants this year, he'll get the one he wants next year, or he'll get a transfer. This is, of all the things to worry about when it comes to USC football, will Lincoln Riley find a good quarterback that wants to play for Lincoln Riley is way at the very bottom of the list. Don't lose any sleep over this, fellas.
All right. You heard it there first. Any other comments?
No, that's correct.
That's correct. That's the easy.
The next quarterback that plays for USC honestly might not be on the roster this year, but whoever takes a snap under center or behind center for Lincoln Riley is going to be a very, very good quarterback and the guy that he wants. And that's how that spot will always work out for Lincoln Riley. If it feels at all like USC has an opening at quarterback, every single person responsible for giving advice to top quarterbacks at any school in the country is going to tell them you need to get over to USC right now and play quarterback for Lincoln Riley. That spot is fine.
All right. Well, listen, we want to thank everybody for their patience from last week and kicking those questions over this week. We enjoy answering your questions. And again, if you have a question or comments for our panel, please go to either the WeAreSC message boards, click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle viewer or listener questions. And we'll be very happy to discuss it, maybe give you some inside info that you're not familiar with. So on that note, that will do it for Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. So until next Tuesday, big thank you again to our great panelists, Marc Kulkin, Erik McKinney, and Chris Arledge. And a special thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Have yourself a great week. And until then, this is your moderator, Greg Katz, reminding all of you to fight on, everybody.